Could you all please rise for the Deputy Lord Mayor, Bruce Reynolds?
Wrong side. Thank you, CEO. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the City of Perth March Agenda Briefing Session. I formally declare this session open at 5 o'clock, and I would respectfully like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet, the Whadjuk Noongar people of Western Australia, and pay my respects to elders past and present. It's a privilege to be standing on Whadjuk Noongar country. CEO, can you please recite the prayer?
Almighty God, under whose providence we hold responsibility for this city, grant us wisdom to understand its present needs, foresight to anticipate its future growth, and grace to serve our fellow citizens with integrity and selfless devotion. And to thee be all blessing and glory forever. Amen.
Amen. Please be seated. Fill us a paper. Okay, moving on to item 3 this evening is the attendances, apologies and annual leave. We have in attendance Councillor Bevan, Councillor Doshi, Councillor Gonsalves, Councillor Leeser, Councillor Wellard, Councillor Gobbard and Councillor Coe. I'll remind councillors to submit any applications for leave prior to the next ordinary council meeting. I'd also like to announce that not in attendance today is Lord Mayor Basil Zemphilis. And in addition, I would also like to welcome our Chief Executive Officer and all our officers and members of the public and media in attendance. Can elected members please acknowledge that you've had sufficient time to read and consider the agenda items presented this evening? Okay, thank you. Also like to remind you to ensure proper concentration and attention is given to our briefing session. Please refrain from using your mobile phone, with the exception, of course, of emergencies. And in the event of an emergency, please pay attention to the directions given by the City of Perth staff. Item 4 is announcements by the Deputy Lord Mayor. There are no announcements today. Item 5, disclosures of interests. CEO, do we have any disclosures of interest received?
Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor, the following interests have been disclosed. Councillor Victor Coe has disclosed an interest in item 16.1, Events Plan 2526. It is a proximity interest in that he owns a property at 108 Terrace Road, East Perth. Councillor Liam Gobbett has disclosed an impartiality interest in item 16.1 as he attended Lightscape in 2023 in his capacity as Deputy Lord Mayor representing the city. He attended the Lightscape 2024 in accordance with the attendance at events policy. No association has been formed and this represents an impartiality interest only. Councillor Catherine Leeser has disclosed an impartiality interest in item 16.2 for consistency and completeness as she is a councillor on the Heritage Council of WA.
Thank you very much, CEO. And any disclosures of interest from the floor? Councillor Wellard.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'd like to disclose an impartiality interest on 16.1 events, as I am still a board member of Perth Frontrunners who hold events at Elizabeth Quay and the city throughout the month of November.
Thank you, Councillor Wellard. We move on to item 6, and 6.1 is public questions. Public question time will be held at the ordinary council meeting next week. 6.2, deputations. CEO, are there any deputations?
Yes, Deputy Lord Mayor, one deputation has been received speaking for item 11.1, expansion of 40 kilometres an hour speed zones.
Thank you, CEO. I now get to invite Jason Bowe, who is speaking for the recommendation in item 11.1. Jason, could you please come forward, state your name and address?
Yeah. Hi, Jason. Address is 1101 and 8 Adelaide Terrace in East Perth.
Okay, fire away.
Yep. Just speaking in support of 11.1 of reducing the speed limit of our local streets. Slower car speeds have proven to improve the walkability and safety of our neighbourhoods and encourage more human activity versus vehicle activity. I think that's pretty straightforward. There's just a few streets that's included in the current plan and the map, which I'm sure is all in front of you, that I have a few concerns about them, as neither the current usage pattern nor the design of the streets fit the description of a local street, which is defined in the document itself. And I fear that they'll become either an enforcement nightmare or be seen as a grubby revenue-raising tactic by the authorities. So the first one is Riverside Drive, reducing that from 50, 60, whatever it is, to 40 on a street that is neither a starting or ending point to a journey, doesn't fit into the description of a local street. It is a main connecting street that connects East Perth to the UWA QE2 precinct, which many of us do access on a regular basis. And I've got some stats here from Main Roads. There's about 27,000 cars that flow through the street on the daily basis, and the usage pattern sort of mirrors that of Bertia Drive, which is on the other side, and the average speed on that side of the road is about 60, which reducing to 40 will significantly impact, I suppose, change behaviour. Another one is Plain Street. This is another street where it's neither a starting point nor ending point of your typical journey. We see about 16,000 cars that flow through this street on a daily basis, and the street itself is two-lane both ways with footpaths for pedestrians, and basically the design of this street doesn't really say local road. Now, this street itself is a common place for the speed cameras, which is on top of the hill next to the East Perth Cemetery. So if we were to reduce the speed significantly, it will probably be seen as a revenue-raising tactic when inevitably it flashes, people get angry. And the third little part is, it kind of goes with the second one, Adelaide Terrace between Plain Street and Causeway Bridge. So if we were to exempt Plain Street, then we probably have to look at the little segment between Causeway Bridge and Plain Street. Otherwise, you have a 50, 60 flowing into a 40, back into a 50 for, it's a pretty common traffic pattern. On top of that, that section of Adelaide Terrace is actually 6 lanes wide, which really doesn't say local road. But besides that, I think it's a really good idea that we're lowering the speeds. It'll make our city a lot more walkable and livable, which is one of our primary objectives. So I hope to see some changes when it comes up in the ordinary council meeting next week, but I speak broadly in support of the motion. Thank you.
All right, Jason, before you go, through to you, CEO. Was there any response to that, or that's just a statement?
I don't believe there's a response,
Perfect.
Deputy
Thank
Lord
you.
Mayor.
Thank you. Any questions from the councillors for Jason?
Thank you, Jason. Thank you for your words. Can you just tell me what are the benefits for leaving those streets, Riverside Drive and Plain Street, and even the short part of Adelaide Terrace? What are the benefits to the city of remaining at 50 kilometres an hour?
What are the benefits of remaining 50 kilometres an hour? It's just, the reason we are changing it to a local street is to promote safety, but we have to do that in a consistent way where the street is designed to be a local street. We can't force behaviour change just by reducing the speed limit without changing the street design. That's not good design principle. You're essentially telling people, hey, it looks like a major highway, but you can only go 40. So people are more responsive to a well-designed street rather than an artificial limit, which we've actually seen plenty of evidence, like Marmion Road coming down from 80 to 70. The community backlash was tremendous. So that's, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, David. Councillor Gonsalves.
You mentioned there around start and end point journeys. From your analysis, is there much start and end point journeys on Riverside Drive and Plain Street?
So to answer that question, it's actually part of the definitions in the document itself that a local street is primarily a starting or end point to the journey. So with Riverside Drive and Plain Street, one simple way to look at it is how many driveways that connect into these streets. And I mean, we drive these streets day in, day out. A few of the councillors live in East Perth yourselves. I'm pretty sure you know there's not many driveways that lead into those streets.
And the next, the other question would be, you spoke around Plain Street and Riverside Drive being dual carriageways. And you also spoke about speed cameras. And while that's obviously a state government issue, what's your thoughts on the intersection between, you know, a change like this requires community consensus. And if we simply have people ignoring the rules on all streets because they feel like they can drive faster, is that undermining where we really need them to focus on being the local streets?
Yeah, so having spoken to people from Main Roads and PTA in the past quite a few times, their typical response to this sort of situation is people will drive as fast as they perceive it's safe and they're not going to get fined. Speed limit is more or less a recommendation rather than a hard line in a lot of, I'm not saying everyone, but a lot of people drive in that manner. So when you have a road that is wide and, you know, people will go quicker, a prime example being Birdia Drive, I mentioned as part of my deputation, the speed limit going into, you know, from Elizabeth Quay going into Mounts Bay Road is 50, I believe. But the average speed going down that way outside of peak hour is actually somewhere around the 60 up to 70 kilometers per hour. So people are driving in a manner they see fit, not so much that people are sticking to the speed limit, with the exception of when speed cameras come through and obviously people get fined. So I guess what I'm trying to argue is we should be designing streets that fit the characteristics that we're trying to introduce before forcing a speed limit, which is going to cause more grief than it is going to solve problems. So,
Fair enough. Very fair point. You good?
I've got one more. Just
Okay,
after you.
far away. How are we going for time?
And just the last question is, I mean, you're pinpointing East Perth, and is that because of the lack of otherwise arterial roads that would be leaving in that? Because you mentioned the dual.
oh, sorry.
You mentioned the dual carriageway aspect of Plain Street and Riverside Drive. I'm just noting that West Perth has 4 or 5 arterial roads that we're leaving the speeds intact, whereas East Perth we've kind of proposing in this recommendation to negate all those incoming arterial roads. Is that the real reason? Is that it's an unbalanced approach between West Perth and East Perth?
I wouldn't go as far as to say that's the primary reason, but it is part of the considerations that, you know, we do have arterial roads. There are lots of people that do drive, and, you know, our journeys do start in East Perth. So to have our daily commute, if we do need to drive out of the city, being on a road that's severely impacted by, I guess, road rules that don't fit the road design, it will cause grief in the community. That's my concern. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor. And before I go to the next question, tongue in cheek, I will say there's been a few ministerial shuffles today, so congratulations on your appointment. Through to you, Councillor Doshi. I think, did you have a question? Yours first.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. So I've just got a question around sort of speed signs as they stand at the moment. I appreciate that you're saying that people's behaviour won't adapt because it will not be in their norm, or visually they will see it as a street that is 50 kilometres an hour, for example. I guess my question is that's a behavioural thing. So instead of sort of looking at it from that perspective, have you considered looking at it from more of an educational piece where when you start seeing something so regularly, you naturally conform to what you see? So 50 is what you see at the moment. I guess, do you drive 50 along those roads, or do you tend to drive a little bit faster sometimes if there's no one else there?
I mean, without implicating myself on doing something illegal, it can be observed that people often do drive faster than the speed limit, and that is a thing. With respect to the education part, yes, we do regularly educate the populace on behaviour change. It is a gradual change. A gradual change probably works better than a very drastic change, and part of the education piece is actually designing the thing to make it appear, it makes sense. You have to sort of pass the pub test. If the freeway suddenly has a speed limit of 40, not too many people are going to be happy about that. That's sort of where I'm trying to get at, yeah.
Sure. So just the final part of that question is, if this transition was slow and with community consultation, it transpires that it happens over a extended period of time, would that be something you'd be more comfortable with?
I think the transition, if it were to take X number of years, where we put it in tranches, which is essentially what I'm suggesting, we put the actual local looking roads, that the roads that fit into the local road definition, into 40 first, and then we work on these arterial roads where maybe we, I don't know, come up with some budget in the next 5 years to redesign them so that they are actually more local, rather than, because Plain Street is originally designed as the industrial road for, well, I suppose East Perth was an industrial area. It is very wide and it's not a local road by any definition. It is a residential area now, but the design itself is not quite in line with what a local road is defined as. Similarly to Adelaide Terrace, where especially the section I described, 6 lanes wide, nobody's going to think of that as a local road. It's just, you look at it, people, I live right in that location. It's scary to cross during peak hour. That's sort of the street it is. You slow it down to 40, sure, but people are not going to actually drive at 40 because they can go faster, similar to Birdio Drive on the other side. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bevan.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Now, Jason, I like your thoughts on Plain Street and Riverside Drive, but have you considered, when Plain Street has a primary school very near to it, what are your thoughts about that and the speed limit then?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, primary schools typically come with a school zone. That's how every primary school works. So we will have sections where it will slow down. I'm assuming the primary school will come with some sort of road redesigns in the vicinity. So that will actually help bring those speeds down as well. It'll be a gradual change. I'm speaking for the change. It's not necessary that I'm against blanket no, that this is a bad change. I'm actually for the change. It's just I feel like there needs to be the points, like the 3 stretch of road that I described, that needs to maybe come at a later tranche with some more thought into it rather than immediately blanket change. That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councillor Wellard.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor, and thank you, Jason, for your deputation. It's great to see somebody passionate about the community and making our cities a better place to live and operate. My question is, are you, considering this motion is to put the proposal out to community consultation, and that's what we've heard a lot of tonight, are you proposing that the council changes the motion between now and next week, or are you happy for it in its current state to go out there and get more of the sort of feedback that you provided tonight?
I mean, without preempting what council will or will not do, I suppose, just making my own suggestions, and if it influences change, great, good for me and good for everyone that I think agrees with me. But ultimately, it's up to the council how they want to bring this to the community. If the council brings the motion as is to the community for consultation, I will make the same deputation again at whatever community, survey that happens. Yeah.
Thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
Any further questions? No. So with that, Jason, thank you for your time and for your efforts
Thank you.
and yeah, always your valuable contribution to your city. Thank you. Moving on to items 7 to 10, which will be 7 to 10 will be dealt with at the ordinary council meeting next week. That being confirmation of minutes, which is 7, 8 questions by members with due notice to be given, 9 correspondence, and 10 petitions. Moving on to reports. Our first report that we'll open up is 11 Planning and Sustainability Alliance reports. 11.1 expansion of 40-kilometre speed zones. There have been no questions with notice. Are there any questions from the floor? Councillor Bevan.
I have a question to administration. Do they believe that 50 kilometres per hour in Riverside Drive and Plain Street will have any detrimental effect on the changing of the speeds?
Thank you, Councillor. Through to the CEO.
If we could take that on notice, please, that would be appreciated.
Any further questions? Councillor Doshi.
Thank you, through you, DLM. With the Riverside Drive part of the actual report, would the administration consider an amendment to the report to exclude Riverside Drive from the proposed 40 kilometres an hour? Thank you.
Through to the CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Yes, the city will take that on notice. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Bevan.
Can I just add Plain Street to that amendment, please?
Okay.
So Riverside Drive and Plain Street. Thank you.
Sure can. Any other questions?
Sure.
Councillor Gonsalves.
Thanks. Through you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Can we just get some advice as to the previous iterations of this presented, or previous versions of the map, and what have been the changes in the past and the rationale for the updated map?
Through to you, CEO.
So we will take that on notice, but for the purpose of clarity through the Deputy Lord Mayor, are you talking about the engagement session that we held with elected members during which this was presented? So you'd like a copy of that presentation and also a discussion between what was presented and what has now been presented post feedback from elected members in the engagement session.
Precisely, but also any other earlier iterations and what changes have been incorporated into that.
I suppose through the Deputy Lord Mayor, how far back would you like to go with that information?
I think to be able to see what feedback we have taken on board would be useful for us to consider what the rationale is, particularly with some of those arterial roads that we've heard in the deputation. So I think where arterial roads have been changed, I think that would be useful for us to highlight what considerations have been already incorporated, and for us to consider whether that in the updated map. So it does go as far back as possible.
I think we have that clarity. Could I just ask the General Manager, Planning and Infrastructure, to confirm that that request has been understood, so to ensure that the councillor receives the information he is requesting?
Through the Deputy Lord Mayor, I think I understand the question. We can certainly provide advice as to what was presented to the elected member engagement session and what has changed. And certainly any iterations have been largely related to what roads are in the city's control and what roads are not in the city's control. That's probably the only other factor that's been a key part of the consideration.
Just to clarify, if there have been other earlier versions where arterial roads have changed, that would also be useful to know. I do have further questions. Just on that map, it was a little bit unclear because obviously our council boundary extends over Newcastle Street. That Newcastle Street is a proposed, well, it appears, at least my reading, that Newcastle Street would be a 40-kilometre speed zone. Is that correct? Or is it seems just on this map to be on the edge of a kind of nebulous green zone?
Moves into Vincent anyway. Sorry, just thinking out loud. Through to you, CEO.
Thank you very much, Deputy Lord Mayor. My understanding is Newcastle, because it is actually a border road, would not be reducing to 40, but we will take that on notice and confirm for next week. Thank you.
And just on the rationale with that, and were there any alternative pathways to ensure cooperation on between councils? I believe the City of Vincent is looking at 40-kilometre-an-hour speed zones, and of course, Newcastle Street is considered by many to be a local street with many different residents, businesses, and active usage of. And if the concern there is whether we can ensure that Newcastle Street doesn't just fall between the cracks.
Through to you, CEO.
Thank you very much. If I could draw the councillor's attention to clause number 2 in the paper. The Perth Inner City Group unites the cities of Perth, Vincent, Subiaco, South Perth and Victoria Park to advocate and collaborate on inner city projects. In 2020, this group outlined priority transport and infrastructure projects, including speed reductions. This particular project and this particular paper has been consulted and is part of a commitment from that group.
And the question there would be, it would be useful for us to know what pathways there would be for us as a city of Perth and the City of Vincent to be able to agree on the speed on Newcastle Street.
CEO.
Thank you, Deputy. Through the Deputy Lord Mayor, yes, the administration have agreed they would provide you advice on the current or proposed speed limits for Newcastle Street.
Is that it, mate? Yeah, David, thank you. Any other questions from the floor? Okay, thank you very much for your contribution, guys. Moving on to 11.2, Draft Residential Design Local Planning Policy. We have 3 questions with notice. CEO. Councillor Lisa, have those questions been answered to your satisfaction?
They have, Deputy Lord Mayor, but I do have a further question.
Fire away, no problem.
Thank you. Since sending in those questions, I had a couple of concerned residents contact me asking me about 11.2, and they've got very specific concerns about the heights of buildings. And one of the questions is, can existing podium heights be increased under this policy? And the second one is this policy allowing buildings on Langley Park.
Through to the CEO.
Thank you. Could I invite the General Manager, Planning and Sustainability to respond, please?
Through the Deputy Lord Mayor, the policy that you're considering in the papers does not address building height. This has been addressed in the building heights and setback local planning policy that was considered and approved by Council for advertising at its meeting in November 2024. So the application of the policy really only applies to development applications for all zoned land within the scheme.
Thank you. Okay. Any other questions from the floor? No, thank you for your contributions. 11.3, Draft General Design Local Planning Policy. We have questions with notice from Councillor Lisa. Councillor Lisa, have those questions been answered to your satisfaction?
Yes, thank you.
Are there any questions from the floor? Thank you very much. 11.4, City of Perth motion, ALGA 2025 National General Assembly Climate Action for Existing Buildings. We have one question with notice. Councillor Lisa, is that to your satisfaction?
Yes, and thank you very much to the admin for the modifications they're going to make to that item.
Okay. Thank you, and thank you for your question. Are there any questions of this item on the floor?
Yep, I'll ask.
Yes, through to you, Councillor Gonsalves.
Welcome a ALGA motion because it's always exciting, but just wanting to know the background and the rationale where this came from, what prompted it, and the work undertaken.
Sure. Through to you, CEO.
Thank you. I think it might be best to invite our Executive Director of Governance and Policy to respond, but it actually came, as I recall, from a fellow councillor. So the councillor might equally like to make some comments, but if I could invite our Executive Director to make a comment, please, and provide some background.
Thank you very much, CEO. And through the Deputy Lord Mayor, there's a call out each year by the National General Assembly for motions from councils, and we normally communicate this to elected members. It's also something that we discuss with our executive team as well. There were a couple of ideas. This one was something that the admin thought had merit. It was also tested with elected members at an earlier elected member engagement session. Certainly on the federal agenda, climate change is a big priority. Cost of living is another big priority as well, and we thought this particular motion addressed both those elements, and that's really how it came about. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. And just as a follow-up to that question, it obviously provides an opportunity for us to advocate at ALGA. Does it provide an opportunity for us to advocate at the state and federal level? And will there be any work done from the admin having passed that?
Thank you. Through to you, CEO.
Thank you. This is one of the key themes of advocacy for the Capital Cities Committee of Lord Mayors, so already stated in their advocacy documents. At a state government level, I suspect one of our key pillars being sustainability, these types of motions and these advocacy points are also embedded in our city's major vision.
Is that all, Councillor? Any other questions from the floor? Okay, thank you very much. Moving through to item 12, which is the Community Development Alliance report. There are nil reports. 13, Infrastructure and Operations Alliance reports. There are no reports. And item 14, Commercial Service Alliance reports. There are no reports. Item 15, Corporate Services Report. 15.1, Monthly Financial Statements for January 2025. There are no questions with notice. Are there any questions on this matter from the floor? Yes, Councillor Gobbett.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Page 181, I also do apologise for not being able to send these through earlier for response, but on page 181 there is a $239.11 payment to the CFMEU Mining Division, and the description just says CFMEU. Then on page 191 and 207 there are payments totalling $740 to the Australian Services Union, and the description is just ASU. What were the payments for? And I appreciate that they can be taken on notice.
Sure, thank you. Through to you, CEO.
Thank you very much. If I could invite our CFO to respond, thank you.
Thank you very much for the question. Through the chair, those would be remittances of fees, union fees collected from staff members forwarded through to the relevant unions.
Thank you. And second question, on page 188 and 211, there are payments totalling $46,954 to the City of Stirling. How much money has the City of Perth been forced to pay the City of Stirling to tip at night since the state government directed the Mindarie Regional Council to cease night tipping? And is there an end date to the notice that has been provided? Considering that we know that nighttime tipping isn't the cause of the odour issues, or are we going to have to keep wearing that cost month on month, even though it's a perfectly good tip site that we can use?
Thank you, Councillor Gobbett. Through to you, CEO.
If I could invite the CFO to respond, please, and if any additional information is required, the General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations is equally aware of the issues.
Thank you very much for the question. Through the chair, that particular piece of work has been assigned to one of my staff members tomorrow morning. once this issue was brought to my attention, we will ensure that that information is available before the council meeting.
If I could also invite the General Manager, Infrastructure and Operations to possibly provide some background as to the situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Through the chair, the matter of the odour and the ceasing of nighttime tipping doesn't have an end date. I think that's the second question you asked, Councillor. So we're in a position that until such time as the landfill closes, or we move to waste to energy, which is now in limbo because of the situation of the preferred bidder going into administration, we're in a situation now that we will be paying these additional tipping fees until such time either of those two matters conclude. Landfill will close in 2028 if we don't go to waste to energy, or maybe slightly sooner if we do. So there's still a relatively long horizon where we're paying the extra over cost, which is around $30 a tonne, or maybe 35, but I'm sure the CFO will provide you with that detail, and then we can forecast it out for as long as it takes to get to the end game.
Great, thank you. And final question, please, Deputy Lord Mayor. On page 192, there is payments totalling $236,522 to the Office of the Auditor General for the annual financial statement. That is an astronomical cost for an audit. Does the city get any oversight of the OAG staff time that we're being charged?
Thank you. Through to the CEO.
I might invite the CFO to answer that one.
Thank you very much for the question again. The way that the annual audit process works, unfortunately, since the OAG took oversight of the process, is that they tendered the work out to the external audit firms who then submit bids to the OAG. The city, unfortunately, has no say either in the selection of the audit firm or in the determination of the audit fee paid. I can't recall the figures specifically off the top of my head, but I have previously, for the Audit and Risk Committee, provided a table, if you like, of the exponential growth in the fees that have been paid. That could be refreshed and provided to council should it be of interest.
Councillor? Okay, thank you.
If I could just add to that through the Deputy Lord Mayor, we have actually written to the Auditor General with regards to the increases that have been occurring every year.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, moving to... Sorry, I missed that one. Further questions? Councillor Gonsalves.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. On page 188, we've got a payment there to St John Ambulance, to defibrillators at $4,590. And I just wanted to ask, because it's been a ongoing community campaign to get defibrillators installed in public buildings and facilities. And there's also been the Automated External Defibrillators Act 2022, passed in the State Parliament, that I believe mandates requirements of local government starting from January 2026. So I just wanted to know if we're able to get where those two devices are going, and whether we have a commitment and a plan to abide by the State Government Act.
Through to you, CEO.
If we could take that on notice, thank you very much.
Any further questions? Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll move over to 15.2, which is the schedule of accounts paid in January 2025. There are no questions with notice. Are there any questions from the floor? Thank you. Item 16, Engagement and Activation Alliance Reports. 16.1, Events Plan 25-26. We have two questions with notice. Councillor Wellard, are you satisfied with those responses?
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Through you, I've received those responses, but I have further questions.
Okay, here's your time. Go for it. You're welcome to it.
Thank you very much. In regards to the events that are being brought forward from December to November, my question was what the impact would be with the considerable Pride Festival that is on during that time. Given the fact that in the last weekend of November, we have street closures across Northbridge and some 42,000 people on the streets. We also have events planned for Elizabeth Quay, including last year was planned for water polo in the Quay and the Perth Pride Run, which takes up a big chunk of the Circular Quay. Not Circular Quay, Elizabeth Quay, wrong city.
It's a long swing.
Exactly. My question is, last year we had a very successful opening on the first week of December, which seemed to be clear of all other events. Is there a reason why that weekend, the first weekend in December, is not suitable for these events? And would pulling it into the same month as Pride Month create a conflict of people and potential safety incident with so many streets closed?
Thank you. Through to you, CEO.
Sorry, just before you answer that, I declared a proximity interest was this one. Should I be leaving the room?
Yeah, good pick up.
Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Coe. Now, can you repeat your question? No, through to you, CEO.
If I could invite the General Manager of Engagement and Activation to respond, please.
Yeah, thank you. Through you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I'm certainly taken on the questions, Councillor Wellard. Our sort of strategy is to broaden the shoulder seasons of the events outside of what was a fairly concentrated December and January event season last year, to try and broaden the economic impact of events through to November and into March. We believe that the events complement each other and there wouldn't be any particular risk of safety concerns or, in fact, the events competing with each other. Moreover, I think the events team and the Alliance have a view that the having a city that's always on in terms of its activation will actually complement each other and give the city a bit larger vibrancy.
Thank you. Councillor Wellard.
I'll definitely take that on notice and consider during the week, just again repeating that we'll have some 42,000 people plus considerable City of Perth staff in Northbridge with streets closed at the exact same time as the drone show. So it does seem to be a significant conflict of timing. My second question was over the other end of the festival, of course, the 3 barge shows that are happening in March. I understand that's a perfect weekend to have that sort of event. My question then is, has West Perth Local been advised of the change of date for their annual movie screening, which happens on the Friday of that long weekend? And if not, when would they be advised of that?
Thank you, Councillor. Through to you, CEO.
If I could invite the General Manager, Engagement and Activation to respond. Equally, if you would like to take it on notice, General Manager.
Yes, through Deputy Lord Mayor, and we will take that on notice if that's okay, and I'll certainly come back to you.
Councillor Wellard, no further questions?
No further questions, thanks.
Thank you for your questions. Any other questions from the floor?
Thanks.
Councillor Gonsalves.
Thanks, Deputy Lord Mayor. Through you, just wanted to ask on page 234, we've got detail there about the returning favourites, Australia Day being one of those. It does mention, similar to previous years and based on the success of the event, it will hold a wide or an array of vibrant entertainment on Langley Park, Riverside Drive, foreshore. It doesn't mention Birak concert. So for the benefit of council and the public, can we get some clarification about where the status of Birak concert and what the thinking of the administration is there?
Okay, no problem. Thank you. Through to you, CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. And this issue was also discussed at an engagement session with elected members. If I could invite the General Manager, Engagement and Activation to provide a response, please.
Sorry, thank you, and through you, Deputy Lord Mayor. Yeah, the Birak concert was discussed at length with the Elders Group to raised concerns that the administration had with regards to the holding of that event on Australia Day. For a number of different reasons, not least of which has been its declining attendance over the past 3 years, where the attendance went from, I think, 10,000 3 years ago down to circa 3,000 last year. In addition to that, the event has caused some concern around hostility with rallies meeting there or ending there, and the view from both the administration and the elders group was that the Birack concert may well be best served on a alternate day, and in fact is being rebranded a multicultural event, which will be concluded at the end of March, which will signify the end of the event season for the City of Perth. The multicultural event will lean heavily into First Nations activation, and at this stage it looks like the event organisers who traditionally ran Birack Concert, who also, by the way, advised excuse me, that they would not run the Birack Concert if it was held in its current format, have agreed that they will do the multicultural event in March.
Thank you, GM. Councillor Gonsalves.
Next follow-up question is on that. Why isn't that then presented to us in our events plan that we're overlooking now? What, in terms of the multicultural First Nations alternative event that is being proposed?
Thank you. Through to the CEO.
I will take that on notice, but through you, Deputy Lord Mayor, I'll take that on notice, but I do believe it was articulated in the plan. It talks about a multicultural event, and it was articulated to the council at the briefing session last week.
It might be presented in our closed sessions, but I think for the benefit of the community and the public, the Australia Day is a renowned day where there are strong opinions and rightfully strong emotions. I'm concerned that the event plan just stays silent on what is our...
Just to quickly jump in there, Councillor Gonsalves, just so what's the question?
And so the question is, why is the event plan that we've got in front of us silent on the removal of the Birack concert, and it's also silent on what we've just been advised there, that there is an alternative multicultural event being planned, but it's not included.
In the graphic, you mean?
It's not included anywhere.
Okay, through to the CEO.
Could I invite the General Manager possibly to assist us in the document as to where the reference is made?
Yeah, I will have, through you, Deputy Lord Mayor, I'll have to come back to you on notice with that, but I'm pretty confident the multicultural event is articulated in the document and the plan. But I'll come back to you on that.
So what we're hearing is the concert in its revised format still going ahead, and they will clarify where it is in the planning.
Yeah, I just don't have the plan.
Which it is November 20. Actually, Charlie's just found it for us. November 25. Yep. You'll see that that it is highlighted there. If that helps.
Just to clarify, we were just told that it was going to be in March for the March multicultural.
Oh, I don't have the plan in front of me. I'll have to come back to you on that.
Yeah, just on page 237, March 2026.
If I might jump in there. Thank you very much. I think the General Manager may have confused the March event with the November event. The intention, and I think it's on page 237 of 268, under November 2025, there's a barge multicultural show by 2 nights. So it is the intention that what was previously an emphasis around the Birack concert is going to move now to a November date, and that would also enable a more of a multicultural show. And I think, as the General Manager also said, provided by the same provider that currently does Birack. So as was discussed in the engagement session with elected members, the numbers have been reducing quite significantly, and the opportunity to recast and redevelop a program where more people will participate. We're very excited by the November opportunity. And today we are actually asking for approval, next week, we will be asking for approval of the events plan as outlined on page 237 of 268, and also further to the other conversations we have had around the rationale and the like to the current program.
Councillor?
Just for clarity, we've got two barge events, one in November 25, one in March 26. It has been mentioned about March. Are they both multicultural and First Nations focused, or just one of them?
I don't, sorry, go through to the CEO.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. To explain, and it's possibly not as clear in the table that has been provided, the barge will actually be introduced into Elizabeth Quay in November and will be retained over the entire period up until the long weekend in March. So it is such that we will be looking to program other opportunities using the barge over that period. That might also include one of the Christmas light installations being on the barge, and also the opportunity for corporates or other organisations to possibly utilise the barge. So we're really trying to explore how we might better engage with the space, and we're using a stage. So we're quite excited by the opportunity.
Councillor?
Just another follow-up. I think the concern that I have, and I think the community, is how do we ensure that we retain a First Nations cultural focus in our events? So is it possible for us to receive amended information that includes that rationale and that information within the events plan?
Thank you. Through to the CEO.
Thank you. We will provide the information and the expectations around the multicultural show by 2 nights in November, noting we have actually consulted with the elders and on their advice, and also with programmers who will be working on this show, who are currently responsible for BIRAC. We're very excited. The specifics of how the program might look are obviously in development, but we're very happy to share the consultation process that has brought us to this stage. Thank you.
And lastly, just to clarify, while I appreciate the consultation process and background, which is valuable, I think what I'm asking is that in this event plan, that it actually be included as one of the events highlighted, for us to be able to have confidence that this event plan includes all the information related to this event, rather than it just being taken as an assumption.
Okay, thank you. Through to the CEO.
We'll provide that information. Thank you.
Any further questions? Okay. Argy, Bargy and Margie, not for the minutes. We'll move on to 16.2, which is the Heritage Adaptive Reuse Grant. Before we do that, can we please ask Councillor Dr. Coe to return? Thank you, Councillor. And just noting, the reason we did miss your interest declaration is because you're on a leave of absence. So it's fantastic to see you here contributing. So that's why it didn't turn up on the notes in front of us. 16.2, we do have an impartiality interest, which is Councillor Catherine Leeser. We have no questions with notice. Do we have any questions from the floor? Thank you. Moving along. Item 17, Chief Executive Officer's Alliance Report. 17.1, the review of Policy 2.17, legal representation. We have no questions with notice. Do we have any questions from the floor? Thank you. 17.2, the amendment to the 2025 Council meeting schedule. We have no questions with notice. Are there any questions from the floor? Thank you. 17.3, the local law review, the adoption of the City of Perth dog local law for 2025. We have no questions with notice. Are there any questions from the floor? Thank you. 18 is committee reports. 18.1, the compliance audit return for 2024. There are no questions with notice. Do we have any questions from the floor? Thank you. 19 is motions of which notice has been given. These will be dealt with at the Ordinary Council meeting next week. Item 20, matters for which the meeting may be closed. There are no matters to consider. Urgent business, this item will be dealt with at the Ordinary Council meeting of next week. Item 22 is closure. So there being no further business, I now declare the agenda briefing session closed at 5:54. Thank you all for attending. Thank you for your contributions. Thank you very much.
Please all rise for the Deputy Lord Mayor, Bruce Reynolds.